We're in for quite a nice lineup here today, as you can see, an all-female panel, which is pretty awesome. I think it's one of the, I guess one of the few that we've had here at the Beach House actually this year, so that's nice, setting another milestone. And of course, a really interesting topic of conversation that we're having here today, and no doubt you're in for a great conversation. We want to keep this very conversational, and more importantly, bring a bit of provocation to the discussion, right? We're all here to think differently around what could be and what is right now, and where the direction of the industry is going, and of course, what that means for customers, and then of course, clients, and many of which are hopefully listening in with us here today. All right, so media as a matchmaker. Your content, my platform. Now this is quite an interesting one from our perspective, certainly as a company. I know this is true of every customer conversation that I'm in. It's all about how can we help accelerate the growth of our customers, and then what do they need to be doing differently around experience? And then naturally, of course, that leads to what does that mean for context? And many of you would be aware that we started quite early in the attention economy equation and have certainly been focusing on how we build on that to drive really awesome customer experience outcomes, not just from a marketing perspective, but business outcomes. So with that, I'll start to kick off the panel here this afternoon and maybe start with Pooja actually on the question of context. Suddenly the word on everyone's lips, but what do you think is changed and why?
So I think context has always been important. It's the who, what, when, where, how of an ad and a message coming together to a consumer. But I think the reason that they're popping is, depending on your level of cynicism or where you sit in the marketplace, I think it's one of two levels. There are a number of companies that I think for years have been doing, I would say, creepy, potentially irresponsible things with data and targeting that are not really respectful of consumers' privacy. And as privacy regulation ramps up in the US and certainly in Europe, I think that they're scrambling for where are they going to go in that new world and what can they anchor on. But more importantly, on a much more optimistic note, I think the reason it's on everybody's mind is because it has become a bigger part of the way that media is being evaluated and considered by smart marketers. They're looking for high engagement environments, because that's a context. Yep. They're looking for partners that can tell them something about the audience they're reaching that they can use in a very thoughtful way, because that's context. They're thinking about the form, the use case. Is it happening in the living room on a big screen television? That's context. And they're thinking about how they can use that to drive greater performance and impact for their messages.
Awesome. Now, before I hand over to Maggie, who I'm sure has got to build on that, it might be helpful to have everyone introduce themselves. So, Pooja, would you like to start?
I'm going to jump right in. Sure, absolutely. I'm Pooja Mitta. I'm the general manager of Effective, which is the advertising sales division of Comcast Cable.
Awesome. Maybe Maggie, and then we'll
Hi, I'm Maggie Schmerin. I'm Chief Advertising Officer at United Airlines.
Good afternoon. I'm Latasha Gillespie, and I'm the head of Global Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility for Amazon Studios, Prime Video, MGM, and Freevee.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sade Mohammed, CMO at Time, running B2B marketing.
Awesome. Good. All right. Now, just building on what Pooja was saying there on context, how do you apply that?
Yeah, I love what she was saying, and we were actually talking off stage a little bit about how it's a really exciting challenge for marketers to really think about context and contextual messages, I think, in a different way than we've done that in the past. And maybe the most tangible example that we have at United Airlines is what we've done in our airport terminals. Yep. And so we have a lot of advertising. Hopefully a lot of you have seen it as you walk through the airports. And that can be a really noisy place. You're focused on getting to your flight, there are a lot of people, and then you're seeing all this signage, all of these messages. And if you go back to a few years ago, we sponsor a lot of sports organizations, a lot of community cultural organizations in our hub cities. That was primarily the message that you would have seen. So if you were walking through Chicago O'Hare, you would have seen proud to be the official airline of the Chicago Bears or the Chicago Symphony, proud to fly the PGA Tour. And we really had a lot of conversation around, is that the right message? Is that what you need to hear from United Airlines when you're faced with all of this on your day of travel at the airport? And the answer is no. If you're a fan of the Chicago Bears or the PGA, there are much better ways that we can reach you through digital, targeting to you outside of the airport in a time that makes sense. When you're in the airport, we want you to have the best travel experience with United. So there's a lot that we can talk to you about our app and where we fly and lots of great customer innovation we have. So we've totally changed the contextuality around the messaging in our airports.
Can I build on that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I actually love that example as you're talking about the noise and the nuance, right? So in the world of streaming, there's a lot of noise and a lot of options for people as they're deciding how they're going to watch content, where they're going to watch content, and it's a noisy landscape right now. And then on top of that, we have like this global recession, and so people now they're not having 10 subscriptions anymore. They're trying to cut through and figure out which ones do I really use, which ones do I really want to keep. So at Amazon, so one of the things that we have decided is a priority is to not only offer Prime Video content and the MGM content, but actually you can watch HBO Max on Prime now. You can watch Showtime. You can watch Lifetime. You can watch a number of other channels on our Prime platform. And the whole premise behind it is, how do I create a frustration-free experience for customers? Right, and we can do that, I think, because it kind of aligns with kind of our central premise and tenets around customer obsession and making sure customers have a frustration-free experience, even at the detriment sometimes of our own content. So I think that works for us. But I think all of us, as we're trying to cut through the noise, think about what's so central to your organization. What do you do in a way that positions you to do it better than anybody else? Yeah.
Few themes there that I wouldn't mind just picking up on. I mean, clearly ease and convenience, right?
Yeah.
This is all about how do you make sure that it's a really relevant experience,
Yeah.
right, naturally. And then the second thing, and this is, I might lean on you here, Sade, with what you've just described there, particularly if you think about how users are engaging with applications, changing between platforms, how are brands, and again, I'll ask you, Sade, for your point of view on this, really balancing that whole brand versus performance, long versus short term, right? Because clearly that's an interesting consideration, particularly given the economic headwinds. Many, well, certainly in the UK, right? It's a real consideration for many brands.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say, so at Time we have several platforms that you can activate against. So we have our live events platform, we have our Time Studios business, film and TV division, we have a sustainability platform. So with the events example, we have our Time 100 Summit, which is, lots of celebrity, lots of splash. And so some brands love that for the awareness, the who's in the room, all of that, their ability to do sort of integration with their products. And then other brands are looking for, their KPIs are really how many introductions were made if they have FAs. So they don't really want the celebrity. They want to make sure that the right folks that their FAs can reach are in the room. So I think we based on who the end consumer is, we think about how we can activate on one platform in different ways.
It's interesting because obviously you're looking at this from a B2B lens, whereas many of us often are looking at it from a B2C lens. So any builds on that from?
I mean, I would say, I think, look, my business is B2B, but I would be doing a huge disservice to our customers if I parked it there. I have to be a B2C business. I have to think about the customer. I have to think about the end viewer. I have to think about their experience. Every smart media partner that anyone here is working with is thinking about what is the viewer and consumer experience on the end of this, because if we're not doing right by that, the whole chain does not work. And so, you talked earlier about brand and performance and how you balance them, and I think it has to be both. And what's exciting is that there's been so much innovation in the way advertising is being delivered. Yes, it's more complicated, but there are people that can help work through that across screens, and now we can have really the best of both worlds. We can serve all levels of the funnel depending upon the solution that we choose as we think about who is our audience. Are we trying to build initial awareness? Are we trying to move them from consideration into preference, or actually close the loop down at intent? And one of the great things I think about multi-screen TV is that we're now in a place where we can do that, and so we can be both, but we have to respect the consumer on the other end or it won't work.
Yeah. And I think the other build there before, Maggie, you might want to say something there, is once you've obviously created that opportunity to engage with that consumer, how do you keep them, right? And again, it's not just about the funnel here, it's about the whole ecosystem of loyalty and everything in between to ultimately drive customer lifetime value. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
it can get murky in the funnel. And, we talk so often as an industry about brand and performance. I think the thing we found at United is really defining, the clear roles and responsibilities. And so we're not going out to the marketplace like two totally separate strategies. So that's a lot of the work that we've done. We've been really focused on brands the last couple of years. The wonderful thing, for our industry right now is we don't have to sell people on travel or Wanderlust. You all know your flights here were very full. TSA lines were long, but we have to sell people on why United Airlines. And that's really the job that our brand marketing is doing for us. And then performance is really able to kind of hunt you down, make sure you do book that ticket with United. But as long as we're clear and we don't get, maybe so murky in the middle, that's where we've had some success.
Yeah. And I think the thing we're selling is customer delight, right? So, well, what does customer delight look like? It's like, do you know your customer well enough to know exactly what they want and how they operate? Are you doing it in a respectful way to your customer, right? And one of the things I thought was really interesting is around that, do you know who your customer is, and have you really understood what it is that they're looking to see and how they want to be engaged with? Is that there was a stat that during the pandemic, 45% of Americans particularly watched a church service online, right? And they said out of that 45%, 15% said before the pandemic they never attended a church service in person. But 18% of the 45% said, or 18% identified as 18 to 34, which I thought was really interesting because, again, as I think about from a streamer, that's my key customer base. Because 18 to 24-year-olds are streaming 8 hours and 11 minutes of content every single day. Because the rest of y'all are at work. And so I thought it was interesting that a lot of times when we talk about faith-based audiences, we tend to create a persona of it's, an older evangelical, over here on this side, and we put them in a box and we say that's who they are. But no, there's young people, right? So like, do you understand that people, we're complicated, we're layered, we might love the deity of our choice and trashy TV, so like, do you know your customer well enough to really get into the nuance and intersectionality of who they are and then bring them something that actually speaks to them?
I love this. I thank you. No, I seriously think that the point you are making is so missed all the time, and it actually speaks a lot to diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Right.
which we constantly leave out of these conversations. So just thank you.
Absolutely.
I mean, we were having a discussion only last week, and just building on this, we talk a lot about personalisation, but realistically, back to exactly what you're saying, if you don't know your customer, it's just another version of segmentation right now. So, this is the opportunity, right, and how you can ultimately maximise first-party data.
Yeah.
Clearly, that's getting a lot harder, which means new and different strategies, right, to connect with consumers, which links back to brand relevance. But what about you, Sade? What would you say?
So we've taken it in a lot of different directions. What's the question on the floor? So I would say, when I think about to Pooja's point about the end consumer and really focusing on audience, that's really at the center of what we do. Our readers are the folks who are consuming our content. And so when I think about one of our biggest franchises, Person of the Year, it was actually Man of the Year until 1999, which is pretty, that's late. And so I wasn't there at the time, and so we did go back and say, over the past 100 years, or however many so years at that time, who would have been the Woman of the Year, and we did custom covers to honor those women. P&G saw that work and said, hey, we want to do something more here, and so we created a Woman of the Year event, which is now in its third year, that we do in LA, where we honor just really incredible women, from activists in Afghanistan to Angela Bassett and some of, and all of them were so honored to be in that room for different reasons. So really powerful for the audience in the room, for the celebrities and the people who are doing, and also other influencers. So I think when we think about brands and how that connects to consumers, that sort of solves that whole circle of this is something that's so core to our brand. How do we make it more relevant, still with that same level of trust and context, but really making it something that's relevant to today and something that our consumers can relate to.
I think we all want to be in that room.
It's a good room. You can come next year.
Invite us next year.
Well, just building then on DE&I, I mean, 1999, you're right, that's super late. How are you thinking differently around content strategies to really connect with those different audiences? Yeah, and this is an open question to anyone here on the stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of content strategies, I think there's a couple things. As I was talking about knowing your customer and who they want or what they want, it's this interesting thing I use. So, how many of you watch Thursday Night Football? Oh, great! Shameless plug. It's on Prime Video. But a lot of times when I'm talking to my leaders, I'm like, okay, listen. You can, if you're the quarterback, you can throw the ball to the receiver on the line of scrimmage and pray for some yak, right? Or you can throw the ball down the field to where the receiver is running the route and hopefully get closer to the end zone and possibly score a touchdown. Right now, if you're throwing the ball to the receiver on the line of scrimmage, you're not getting much yardage because the defenders are coming after him. That's the same thing if you're only playing to the customers you have today. If you're only building content for people that are on your service, your platform, whatever today, that's where you're throwing the ball. But you got to be thinking about who's running that route down the field, and that goes back to that younger audience, that more diverse audience, that very intersectional, complicated, nuanced audience. And so then it's like, well, who are the creators that are speaking to them, right? And how do we get in business? Because it's not enough just to put them in the front of the campaign on the ad. It's not enough just to put them on the screen as the actors, because at the end of the day, actors will tell you we are union workers. Somebody else wrote the script, right? And so it's about who is behind the camera making the decisions. Who do we give the right to tell the story, and do we empower them to tell it the way they want to tell it? And when you do, you can get magic, like Donald Glover creating Swarm, right? And which became this huge hit that, just had this buzz around it. You get things like Harlem, Tracy Oliver telling the story of 4 black women in Harlem, which you think is a very maybe niche show, it may sound like in the beginning, but it's not. It's a show that has transcended beyond just black women, beyond women of color, to women globally and men. Like, people love the show. And so that's the way in which you really think about who are the creators that are speaking to that next generation, and how do you get behind their vision and amplify it? Yeah.
And I think even, I love what you're saying about that, and even like a lower hanging fruit and a really actionable insight for all of us, even to just start with your social media and your organic social, because it can feel a little daunting with paid and who's the right audience that you're going after. We do a lot of work thinking about new audiences that we need to go introduce ourselves to on the internet. So, our core audience on social media, we call them the AV geek, aviation geek. They love airplanes. We could just talk to them all day long, and that would be fine. We'd have really great performance and rates of engagement, but that's not enough. We want to go introduce the brand to new corners of the internet, and the best way to do that is how you're saying, through creators, through influencers, and it's a really easy way, all things considered, to dip your toe into that space before you do, the bigger activations and media buys.
I think that, the common thread here is that whether you're trying to attract viewers to your platform or subscribers to your service or people to your brand, there is all this research about how brands actually grow. And it's because you don't just speak to the same people who are already there. You go out and you push to the outer edges of that in a way that's relevant and makes sense and acknowledges where those people are. And I think that's got to be a fundamental job of advertising, period, whether it's delivering and ad-supported platforms for content also.
Yeah, it's a great segue into to do that. How do you think about innovation through each of your organisations? Lots of discussion here over the last few days on all things Gen AI. I think there's certainly different points of view around how it can be best leveraged, how we need to think about that in terms of ethical application, and of course, longer term, what are the consequences or the cause and effect? So perhaps I can throw to you perhaps, Sade. You can...
Yeah. So one of the things that we did early this year at Time is we took down our paywall. So that was a strategic decision that ultimately was for our readers. our customers. So, we really believe that everyone should have access to journalism and good quality journalism. So now you don't need to log in and forget your password and all those things that happen when you try to get onto a news site. And so we also opened up 100 years of our archives. And so what does that mean for newer audiences to younger audiences, more diverse audiences to interact with our content? When you think about a platform like TikTok, and there's a lot of good stuff happening in conversation, right? And so that's all contextual. When I went to go speak to my high school a while ago, and I was like, how many people know Time? Everyone raises their hand. How many people read Time? Right? So thinking about what would it mean for a different context, a different way to engage with our brand for younger, more diverse consumers. So I think that's where a lot of our innovation lies, is in community building. I think media has an incredible power to build community, to make people feel like they belong, speaking of DEI. And so that's how I see my role, is how do we invite more people into the brand, and then they become champions for us.
Yeah, I think for us, innovation, a couple things I think about. One is like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, the Tolkien universe, they are a true fandom. Like they follow the Tolkien universe, and they know it, they love it. But we had an opportunity to, be a part of that franchise, but in a new way, because our Lord of the Rings is actually coming from the appendix of one of the stories. So it wasn't a story that was already written. It was just an appendix that then we took and created a story. And so we got to explore a different part of this world. And then what we did was we literally went all around the globe looking for the best people to play these parts. And we found some incredible actors from everywhere, right? New Zealand, Puerto Rico, London, so Afghanistan, all these amazing talent. I'm sorry, she's not from Afghanistan, she's from Iran. But these talented actors who became a part of this story that was so amazing. So in addition to the fans that were already loyal, we got to introduce the Tolkien universe to a whole new set of fans that maybe wouldn't have watched it before. And I think that's a way we can reinvent and think about how do we bring more people in to the conversations. And another one I think is the investment. A lot of times when somebody's a new filmmaker or new director or whatever, we talk about taking a risk on people, which just irritates me. No, it's not a risk. It's an investment. And when you call something a risk, you treat it like a risk. And it really isn't. So when we got into this Creed franchise with Michael B. Jordan, it's a spinoff of the Stallone franchise. It was great, right? And Michael B. is growing up in the franchise, Creed 1, Creed 2. We get to Creed 3, and he wants to direct, but he hasn't directed before. But again, seeing his growth and seeing who he's become, we're like, yes, you should. And let's get behind you and put the resources behind you to make you successful in this. And that Risk ended up being the highest grossing domestic sports movie in the country and over 200 million in the global box office. And so it's just reframing how we're seeing things. And they're not risk. They're really investing in the future and people who have their pulse on the culture.
I like all these examples. I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle, which is when you talked about how are we innovating and leveraging what's going on with technology to connect with audiences. And so for us, that is the crux of our business. We help advertisers of all different sizes, local, national, and everything in between, connect with their unique audience. And so we do that in a combination of ways. We can do it through context. Yes, we definitely sell sports and high-value programming across screens. But more and more, we're doing it based on understanding segments and helping our advertising partners to actually understand who their segments are, right? Using addressable media, you can really efficiently test a creative. You can test, is this a place where my brand is going to resonate in a pretty easy, turnkey, fast, not exactly, you're not spending a ton of money way. And then if it works, you double down and go further, or then you try the next thing. And so more and more, we're able to do that because we're able to leverage not just our understanding of exactly where people are and what they're watching and all that context, but also a little bit about who they are because of the relationship we have with them. So I think that's probably where we focus most. And then the other area is, I mentioned we do a lot in local. And you had mentioned generative AI and where all that's going. We're not there yet, but one thing that I keep my eye on, I think is really interesting, is we have an in-house agency that builds literally hundreds and hundreds of campaigns per year for very small advertisers. And the idea is give these businesses access to, what is really professional, creative, at a price point that makes sense for them, and then help them really find their unique audience for that message. And I think that AI has the power, particularly what's happening with image generation, to potentially open up a lot more creative tools to that advertiser set, which is really exciting and will be massively impactful for those businesses when I consider how heavy a lift creative is in the actual, did the ad work sort of equation.
Well, there's a few things in that, isn't there? I mean, clearly there's a bit of new value, new behaviours, new culture, which comes through properly understanding your end customer. Maggie, we touched on it just a bit before, and I know that you've been using a lot of geolocation-based activity, right? Particularly if we think about the airport example. Maybe just talk to us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I would say, as an airline, we're based in the U.S. We have 7 hub cities in the U.S. Where we see, the majority of our flights and customers. And so it's important for us to think about, what is our global strategy, what is our national audience, but really make sure that we don't talk to these 7 cities as if they're all the same. And they're really different. And I'm sure a lot of you sitting out there, call a lot of these cities home. If you live in New Jersey, you are probably flying United Airlines out of Newark. If you live in a market like Denver, you have more choice. We have, a competitor there in Southwest and even in Frontier. And so we're really focused now, I think, more than ever on what does the customer in Denver need to hear from us? What does a customer in New Jersey, San Francisco? We already have the lion's share of the customer base in a lot of these markets, but we want people to feel good about us and our brand, and not that, maybe they're just tied to the loyalty program because that's where their status and their miles are. And so we're placing more emphasis than we ever have before on a geographical strategy, which has been really interesting and fun.
So that, I think, speaks very much to sort of the way we look at the world, which is that a huge part of context is where you physically are. In your day, are you at the office, are you at home, but also physically geolocation. And more, I think it is powerful context. And I feel like I need to make you do this, but does everybody know what United Airlines did on the direct flight from Newark to Nice? Because that is literally the most powerful and specific. You knew your audience, you knew they were going, you knew the mindset, you knew where they physically were, and you nailed it. And fangirl moment.
Thank you, thanks. Yeah, so what she's talking about, we added extra flights, actually, nonstop Newark to Nice because of the demand of this event here in Cannes. And then, we realized it's all marketers going, and so how can we really take advantage, talk about a great contextual moment? This is an audience that loves the power of word-of-mouth marketing. We knew they were going to use social media, so we thought, let's do some special touches for these flights. We had receptions in the gate area with rosé, so everyone could start their Cannes experience a little bit early before they boarded that flight. And the feedback has been terrific that we've heard. So something small that we decided to do last minute that has really paid off.
Shows us how much impact it has.
Power of local.
Right, that's it. Exactly right. All right. Well, I've been told we're almost at time, and I want to open up for some Q&A. But before I do, just ask each one of you, if you think 2 to 5 years from now, where would you say we're going to be?
Who's going to be?
Your brand in the context of this conversation.
Okay, great.
Your business, your customer.
So I would say for time, it would really be that sense of belonging that I was talking about. I think when we talk about innovation, we focus a lot on technology, which is so important, but it's really a tool for people to feel either more connected or less, more included or not. And so I think to the extent that we can create opportunities for people to connect in ways that feel authentic to them with the right language, convening the right sorts of people, displaying the right types of shows and programming, I think that's our biggest opportunity, bringing in some younger folks to really feel like they belong. When they see time, they say, that's for me. Yeah.
I think in 2 to 5 years, hopefully we are your entertainment destination where you have one place where you can go and find the content that you want to see that is going to resonate with you because we are respectful and smart about who you are, and the algorithm is responding to that. excuse me, and hopefully if we do it well, not only are we entertaining you, but hopefully we're increasing just a little bit more humanity in the world.
Amen on the humanity. As a business, first of all, there is this sort of notion out there that TV is the past, and I just couldn't feel more differently about that. Multi-screen TV, which is where we are, is very much the future. It's putting it all together, and so I hope and think that 2 to 5 years from now, we are going to be that much further along our journey to, one, continue to grow scale through things like Zumo and now TV, through streaming, through all the different ways that we are in people's lives, through all of our partnerships, as well as to really intelligently using all the technology we have to connect brands with their audiences in smart and impactful ways.
Meg?
Yeah, and I would just say, we're innovating like crazy at United. We're buying a bunch of new planes. We're bringing seat-back TVs because we heard everyone, wants those back. And so it's our responsibility to match that innovation that's happening at the enterprise level with what we're doing in advertising and marketing and communication. So I'm really excited to find the ways to tell, what is a really exciting experience that people are going to have as travelers over the next 2 to 5 years, and how can we make sure that we continue to break through, we're relevant with our approach to all of them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the common thread here was ultimately relationships, right? Trusted relationships. So that's a really great discussion. Thank you, ladies. I'll open up now for any Q&A. No? All right. Okay.
We were very thorough.
You must have
Very
been. That's
thorough.
right. You must have been. That's it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, go for it. Awesome.
I'm going to ask, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I want to ask, sorry I missed your name, but you're now the Angel of United who had the new flight, so we're all very indebted to you. Sitting here, since this is called My Content, Your Platform, what do you need from these 3 awesome platforms to help your brand? You talked about the focus in airports and really evolving, but really from the power of Comcast, advertising, Amazon, and time, what do you need as a brand to be successful now, but also in the future for your future marketing plans?
I love that question. That's a terrific question. So we really need, our friends on the platform side to understand our business. And I come from an agency background myself, so I get it. You're working with lots of different companies and lots of different sectors, so it can be really hard. But that's when we win. That's when there are those amazing partnerships, when you understand not only the sector we're in, but where we sit in our competitor set, when you know what our 7 hub cities are. There's nothing that makes me kind of tune out when someone talks about a hub that's not a United hub, or a rare airport that we don't fly in and out of. So it really starts with that understanding of the business. What are our objectives? I think a lot is on us as a brand to be better at briefing and better giving you the information that you need, doing one-pagers, doing brieflets, where we can. But then really coming together and having these guys ask questions where they maybe need a little bit more understanding, and for it to be that ongoing, consistent dialogue about the core business, how we make money, what's important to us.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time, and that's a wrap.
Thank you.